Okay, so I'm back and I'm sort of on my own little staycation this week. So I'm not near a computer, but I want to talk about a bunch of stuff because I have been noticing some things this week and I want to go through these magazines with you eventually. That's pretty funny. I don't have a computer, so it'll be like the 7 days and I'll make a video about going through the magazines and I'll make it ASMR and I'll smooth the pages. Anyway, but we're not going to talk about Kate Middleton tonight because I just I've been going through. I'm just focusing on this though because I did want to ask you one thing before starting in on my observations about the the borderline nightclub shooting. First of all, this story about Kate Middleton having baby number 4 is still totally tripping me out because I don't remember her having baby number 3. So I guess as a lead-in to my next video that I'm going to make, which now has absolutely no suspense value to you, since you know what I'm going to talk about, although you don't know everything I'm going to say, I just want to ask you guys if any of you remember her having baby number 3. Because I remember George and I remember Charlotte. And I looked up who baby number 3 was, which we will get into in the next video, but I do not remember this baby. It's the unremembered baby. And it's kind of hilarious, too. I have to make this other observation because it says Kate Middleton is 96 pounds, which is no laughing matter because I would assume she's... What are you doing? The cat wants to get up. I would assume she's a good deal taller than I am, although I haven't researched it. And 96 pounds was what I was when I was like at my skinniest, and I'm under 5 feet. I'm just under 5 feet. But the funny thing is that, like, if you guys could see, and some of you probably have in the grocery store, if you guys could see what she looks like in the picture, not through this picture of this lens, she's even skinnier. Like, in other words, she's skinnier just on the magazine cover to the naked eye. But in my filming this, Kate Middleton has automatically gained 20 pounds. This picture of Kate Middleton has gained 20 pounds. It's pretty funny. She looks normal sized and beyond in this incarnation through this lens. But anyway, so I just want you guys to ruminate on baby number 3, and if you remember her ever having baby number 3, because I don't, but apparently the kid's name is Louis. I remember on Facebook, I voted for, before I knew what their first baby would be named, I voted for Grady. Hey, Fred Sanford. Hey, I'm looking for Fred Sanford. Like something like Grady or Buddy. No, Buddy was like from a play. Buddy was from this play called The Foreigner. Prince Buddy. Oh yeah, that'd be good. Prince Buddy. Anyway, so ruminate on that. But anyway, this borderline bar and grill shooting is kind of tripping me out. I mean, for obvious reasons, of course. It's just horrible that it even happened again. But I remember being introduced to the concept of fake news and at least fake interviews at the Pulse nightclub shooting. And I remember for a while I was really, really riveted by it, but still not completely sold on the idea that the news might be fake. And I'm still not totally sold on the idea that the shootings are fake, because I think that would be too complex to pull off. And with the advent of MK Ultra and things like that, that would seem to be the easiest route, to just be like, oh, we're going to program this guy to take down a whole bunch of people and then he'll kill himself, which is how most shootings go down. And if we're talking about orchestrated and fake news, and if we're talking about the 1% powers that be, the elite, and supposedly how evil they are, why would that not be beyond them to enact a real shooting if they wanted to, for whatever their nefarious motives and purposes were? But I have a friend who works in the entertainment industry. And, you know, she's behind the scenes at the studio. She's not an actor or anything like that. But she and her staff get invites to a lot of movie premieres that their studio puts out. And whenever people review their movies, it's always employees. It's always employees that get filmed, and they're kind of told what to say. So she's not into conspiracy theories at all, but she does believe the people who get interviewed, at the very least, are plants. In other words, everybody works for the movie studio that she works for, so why would you not have people be interviewed who are plants themselves, so that you can control the interview? And so if they don't cry, you can't understand what you're saying. Because when I cry really hard, you can't understand what I'm saying. I remember, and this is not a laughing matter because it is a serious fucking thing, but I remember when I was a kid, like, just all the time when I would cry, my mother would go, like, get your hand out of your mouth. I can't understand what you're saying. Jennifer, you're going to have to calm down. I can't understand what you're saying. So it makes so much sense that they would interview somebody where they could choreograph it. They could tell them what to say. They could be like, oh, don't cry too hard, or if you're going to cry, cry lightly, so on and so on and so forth. So what prompted my sort of interest in how strange, or if it was as strange as the Pulse nightclub shooting, because the Pulse nightclub shooting was pretty strange, especially after all the analysis, was I was listening to the Tim Conway show on KFI. I guess it's mostly a conservative talk radio station, although I don't find it as obnoxiously conservative as Rush Limbaugh. But it's conservative, but it's palatably conservative for my taste. Anyway, so Tim Conway was talking, and he was just talking about like, oh yeah, the Borderline nightclub shooting was just terrible, and we have footage up on our website if you want to go check it out. So, there's footage of the gunman going through the club and shooting it up. And then he pauses and he goes, because obviously someone was brave enough to sit there and film it. And the only thing I could think about that is that if it was a real shooter, the way that I think it was, like a program shooter, then the shooter was programmed not to hit the person who was filming the shooting. Or the shooting was totally fake. But again, that's still kind of hard for me to believe. So anyway, that was really weird. And then there were some people also on the radio who were talking about it. This wasn't Tim Conway. This was more the morning show. And they were saying, oh, yeah, a lot of people that have been interviewed about it have been really calm and just kind of taking it in stride. But, I guess everybody takes people's deaths in their own way and blah, 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 blah. So then I thought to myself, man, I have got to go on YouTube and just watch the regular news coverage. So the very first bit of news coverage I watched was like somebody sounding like they were breaking up and crying, but there were no tears. It's like, I can make my voice go like this and it can sound really, really horrible. And I'm so upset and somebody ruined it for kids to go dancing at night. But I'm not crying. And that's exactly how this girl sounded. But the giveaway was there were no tears. Because obviously tears you can't fake unless you put those teardrops in your eyes before you go on camera, which apparently nobody ever does, because nobody ever cries in any of these interviews. Not at the Pulse nightclub. I mean, there was that kid, oh my god, there was that skinny kid, like, and he was like the worst crier. I was like, and we just wanted to come here and have fun, and now we can't anymore. And no tears. Again, no tears. And this is telling even too, because at the Oscars, like, what's a night of most artifice, in Hollywood, or just anything, just like award shows. I mean, I like award shows because anything can go wrong at any second in their life. And so if something does go wrong, then they can't go back and do a retake, although I suppose they're on delay, but even still. But even the Oscars, they've got covered, because I'll never forget. In 2016, Viola Davis got up and she won the Oscar. And she was standing up there, just crying and just wailing, and her voice was all emotional and shaking. No tears. There was no water running down her face. And I made a joke on Facebook. I was like, did they get Botox in their eyeballs so that they won't ruin their makeup for the Oscars, so that they can keep it all sanitized? And the real giveaway, because sometimes you want to be fair. You're like, oh, well, maybe it's just a trick of lighting or something. But they cut out to the audience, and there was a man sitting a few rows back, and tears were streaming down her face as he was watching Miss Davis give her tearless speech. So that's kind of telling. So basically, anyway, everybody that they interviewed outside Borderline nightclub, none of them had, if they were crying, which most of them weren't even trying to cry, they had no tears. And then there was an interview with two kids, college age looking guys. They were so calm. Actually, everybody who wasn't pretending to cry was so calm about it. I mean, I can't speak for how I would be if I had just been through something like that, but I think I might be shaking just a little bit and my adrenaline might just be way up. And I might be talking really fast and maybe even unintelligibly. Which, of course, they don't want because you can't air that on network TV. So anyway, that was really telling. Now, there was one point where the sheriff, I think it was the police officer who got killed, his partner, was being interviewed, and his voice actually cracked and broke up. And that sounded genuine to me. But, again, if you're actually going to initiate a real shooting and you want to make it look as real as possible, then somebody's got to get killed, right? What's the point of MK Ultra if for nothing else to make people go out and do your bidding, if even in the most heinous of ways? The last thing I wanted to address was the name of the nightclub, or I guess it's a bar and grill, Borderline. Well, what's happening at our border lately? That's a distraction within a distraction, reminding us of the thing we're supposed to be distracted about in and of itself in a nutshell. So it's just an odd name for a nightclub when you parallel it to what's been going on in the news. And of course, now it's not been mentioned in the news, I don't think, for the last 24 to 48 hours because of this. But it's like sort of like a distraction out in plain sight. Kind of the way they want to distract us from blaming the 1% who we should be blaming for having less than what we should have, and putting it on the poor people coming over here, the poor, scared people who are the targets of violence and discrimination within their own countries. And that's what so many people just fail to see. And that's a distraction within the distraction. Instead of looking to the rich white man, instead of blaming him for all your problems, blame the poor brown people. Oh yeah, they're taking your jobs for cucumber. You want to pick cucumbers for $2 an hour. You want to clean toilets for $5 an hour. I don't think so. Because that's the kind of jobs they're taking. They're not taking your jobs that you would want. And why aren't where are the CEOs' cages and where are the employers' cages who hire these people? Because if they didn't hire them, then problem solved, right? You'd nip it in the bud. I mean, I know people would still try, but anyway. Sorry if I sound a little harsh, but just feeling a little honest tonight. Anyway, something to think about. What are your thoughts? Meantime, peace out. Oh, okay, and one more thing I forgot to say. And I'm ramping up the cute factor, of course. Look at him breathe. I'm ramping up the cute factor, of course, after my little harsh diatribe. But anyway, one last thing I forgot to say is that at least a dozen people from the Vegas shooting, the Vegas country music shooting, were at this Borderline nightclub shooting, which I automatically think is suspect. I mean, I guess if they're country western fans, maybe they do mass exoduses to these things, but I don't know. From what I understand, Borderline, it was kind of a special college night, but from what I understand, Borderline is always sort of like a country western bar. Oh my God, that was a big breath. Borderline is always kind of a country western bar and grill. So that was the one thing. And then the other thing was, I'm going to try and leave the link below, was that the two college boys that were being interviewed were in front of a blue screen. I swear. Okay, I don't have a lot of time left. Peace out.